and welcome to Chit-Chat with Autumn. I'm your host, Autumn Short, and I am really excited. Today I have a great guest with me. She is a mother of 8, and she is the founder of Idahoans for Local Education. Her name is Stephanie Zimmerman, so please welcome my guest, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Hello, Autumn. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you for being a guest on the show with me today. I do appreciate that.
This should be fun.
So you are the founder of Idahoans for Local Education. So tell me a little bit about what that is and how you became involved with that.
Idahoans for Local Education is a group of parents. It's a grassroots movement. And right now our main goal is to fight Common Core, because Common Core removes local control from our schools and puts it with big businesses, corporations, and Washington, D.C. So our goal is to bring it back down to the local level where parents and teachers, those that interact with kids on a daily basis, can do what is truly best for those children in the classrooms. And so that, like I said, Common Core removes all of that. And so we're here to get rid of Common Core.
I love it. I am not a fan of Common Core. I have not been quiet about that. So people who know me know that I do not agree with Common Core. So for the people who do not know what Common Core is, because it has been around for a little bit, but they're now starting to really implement it into our schools. Can you give a brief description about exactly what Common Core is?
You're going to hear a lot about Common Core is just a set of standards. It's just a set of standards and assessments. It's nothing else. We want higher standards, but Common Core is really a package deal. We call it the 4 pillars of Common Core. And the first one, yes, is the standards and assessments. But the second one is data collecting. The third one is equitable teacher distribution. And the fourth one is turning around of low-performing schools. Now, many of those sound like good ideas. Everything but the data collecting, when you just take it at face value, who doesn't love higher standards? Who doesn't think that we should have equitable distribution of teachers? And why shouldn't we be turning around low-performing schools? But when you really get down into the details and the nitty-gritty of it, what those things do is they remove, like I said, the local control from the districts and the state, and they put it in Washington, D.C. and with corporations. So that, in a nutshell, is Common Core.
So in order for the states to agree or to, how do I want to word this? So each state was offered Race to the Top funds, grant money. And in order to receive that grant money, they had to agree to adopt the Common Core standards. There are four states, Idaho, Kentucky, Maine, and Washington, are the only states that had to have it approved by our legislators. So do you think that our legislators approved the Common Core standards because of the Race to the Top funds, or were they not educated on it? Why do you feel that our legislators here in Idaho said, yeah, let's go ahead and adopt the Common Core standards?
Well, part of it is because we have a system where every 5 years, I believe it is, the standards are reviewed and new ones are put into place, or they're updated or whatever, and Common Core was slipped into that 5-year cycle. And as you talk to many of the legislators, it didn't actually even pass the full legislature. I should explain that first. It only went through our Senate Ed Committee, basically. They were the ones that saw it and sort of signed off on it. But they had Tom Luna, and they even had Jeb Bush come out and talk to him about it. And so they, heard all these great things about it, and they thought, okay, why not? Let's sign on to it. But then as it began to be, implemented, and that they looked at it and they said, wait a minute, this isn't what we were told it was at all. Particularly as parents, like yourself and myself, started to contact them and say, have you really looked into this? And as they got digging, they went, this is not what we were sold. So it didn't even have necessarily anything to do with Race to the Top, because they weren't necessarily involved in our Race to the Top application. And we didn't even get any Race to the Top funds. But you're right. In order to even apply for those funds, we had to, some of the points that we got were the data collecting, if we put in a good data collection system, and adopting common standards and assessments. Those went towards our points towards earning Race to the Top dollars, which we didn't get any of.
So with that, they always say, and I laugh about this because I say you can't say Common Core without saying the word rigorous, because rigorous and Common Core go hand in hand. They always say how the Common Core is a rigorous set of standards. But isn't it true that 33 states overall had their standards with math and language arts were actually higher than what the Common Core standards are? So are these set of standards actually good for Idaho to look at, or is this something that the standards are just absolutely out the window, don't even waste your time looking at these type things?
You know, they're really not good standards. They are, you know, and I talked to James Milgram about them, and I said, how can people say that they're higher and yet they're lower? And he says, in the lower grades, in the younger grades, quite often they might be higher, but that doesn't mean they're developmentally appropriate. He says, but once you hit the high school grades, he says, you're not going to get into a STEM career, science, technology, engineering, or math career, if you stay on the Common Core track. Because they don't offer calculus in high school. There's no way you can reach calculus in high school if you're on the Common Core track. English language arts, talking to Sandra Stotsky. In fact, Sandra Stotsky is really funny. She doesn't call it rigorous. She calls it rigor mortis. She says, this is going to kill kids. She says it's an empty skill set. It's not actually teaching critical thinking like they say it's going to. It's teaching children empty skill sets that do not help them apply what they've learned later at a university. You know, you hear critical thinking all the time. Common Core does not develop critical thinking because Common Core has children reading a lot more informational text. You want a child to really develop critical thinking, they have to be reading literature where not everything is spelled out, and they have to read between the lines and figure things out. That's where your critical thinking is developed, not in this informational text that feeds you everything. So no, you know what, we already have access to, Sandra Stotsky wrote a set of standards, and for those of you who don't know who Sandra Stotsky is, she wrote or helped write the #1 rated Massachusetts English language arts standards pre-Common Core. It's very well known that Massachusetts had to drop their standards when they adopted Common Core. But she has a set of free English language arts standards that she, just from the goodness of her heart, published on the internet for anybody to use. And we've been in contact with Indiana and California, who both have the highest math standards in the nation. They'll let us use their standards, and you know, we'll need to adopt them to fit Idaho's specific situations. But why did we adopt these mediocre Common Core standards? They're not better, they're not rigorous, they're confusing, and they're detrimental.
They're absolutely, you hit the nail on the head when you said confusing. They are very confusing. And I will say, when I sit here and look at it, and you like you said, free, she's offering the curriculum that she wrote, the free set of standards. Why would you not adopt that? Why would you not take California's set of standards, which was one of the highest set of standards in the nation, and adopt that to fit Idaho? You know, let's take the states that have the highest set of standards and that you can see are doing something well, and let's then implement that into our state. And instead of this set of standards that didn't have any educators even on their board when they wrote these set of standards, it's just written by a lot of, what do we call them? We call them Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, I guess.
You know who they were? They were what Terrence Moore likes to call arch testers. They worked for the testing companies. What this is about is making money. This isn't about the standards and what's best for the students. This is about making corporations money. This is about giving people power. This has absolutely nothing to do with our students and what is best for them.
That is completely correct. And I want to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the data mining, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about parents who have children who are in advanced placement classes or who have IEPs and who have learning disabilities. How does this Common Core affect them?
Those children will not be you won't be able to personalize anything for anybody. In fact, Arnie Duncan, bless his heart, you have to wonder if he's had any children or any interaction with any children. He just came out and said that children with learning disabilities, what really is going to make them do better is more rigorous standards and more testing. Because we all know, you have an autistic child that learns different than anybody else, more testing is going to make them just like everybody else and learn like everybody else. So there is no room for individuality in these standards and in the system that's been put in place. And you're going to hear from, Tom Luna and those in the State Department. Oh no, this is more individualized. No, it's not. It's less, and there's not room for creativity. In fact, as you read through the standards, this is the thing. One of the first things that caught my eye. You read through the standards. There's not one word of entrepreneurship, innovation, invention, creativity. Nothing. Everything is geared towards making your child a good employee, which, you want your children to be good employees. You do. But you want them to have the ability to think creatively and to develop and to be their best self and not just a cog in the machine. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't allow for any individuality.
It does not, and it's very it's frustrating for me as a parent because I always, the sky's the limit for my kids, and yet they are conforming them to something that may not be, who's to say that after my son graduates from high school, my daughter graduates from high school, because of the testing and the scores that they received on the test, they say, you need to go and join the military. Now you need to go work in the factories, and you need to go work in the fields. And I have a feeling that that's kind of where this is going, because when you look at more of the other countries, let's just take North Korea, for example, because we know exactly that's what they do. They collect the data mining on all of their citizens, and then they tell them where they're going to be based off of their schooling, education, test scores, and everything like that. But along those lines, too, with the SBAC test, these are awful tests that we are putting our children through. These are not just a 1 hour or 45-minute test. Share a little bit about what exactly these tests are that our children have to take.
Well, let's start with the premise that Common Core really is not about what we're teaching our children. Common Core is about what can be tracked, what can be mined, and so when you're teaching your kids, they're teaching them specifically to this Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium test. And this is really awful on a number of levels. So first off, it's hours and hours and hours of testing. It's going to depend on the school your child goes to and how sold they are on the test. There are school districts on the other side of the state in eastern Idaho that have determined they're not going to give their students the full test because they find it a waste. Bless that superintendent. He's an awesome individual. But up to 8 hours worth of testing for these kids, starting in the third grade.
I was just going to say, that's not just for high school students. I mean, high school students you can take and, okay, we'll get you in, the 8 hours of testing. They can do it because they're a little bit older, more mature. They can handle their time more wisely. But when you're talking about a third grader, that is very stressful for a third grader to hear, we're going to be taking an 8-hour test. And then even for the high school students. So they take these tests, and then they miss class periods, and then they have more work to make up, and it absolutely makes no sense for me. But then they say, well, we have to take these tests so that we know that we're all on the same page and what we're learning is what everybody else around the country is learning. But we already have tests like that, and that's what I thought the SATs and ACTs, that's what I thought those tests were for. Am I wrong about that? Is that thought?
You're absolutely right. And on top of that, we also have the NAEP, which my mind just blanked on what NAEP stands for, National Assessment of Academic Educational Progress, I think is what it is. That was what the NAEP was developed for specifically, so that we could test across state lines and see, how we compare it. But it's not taken every year. I think it's like 3rd grade, 8th grade, and then 10th or 11th grade. But it gave a pretty good overview of how our kids were doing compared to the rest of the country. And like you mentioned, we already had the SAT and the ACT that determined them, heading into college. So no, the need for this test across, the country, the SBAC or PARC, no, completely unnecessary. And then as you get, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so now that we have these test scores, are these test scores going to determine how much funding our school districts get, or which teachers stay and which teachers go? What exactly is the purpose of the test?
Well, remember pay for performance that we had in Students Come First?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Interestingly enough, as you get digging into Common Core and everything that's there, and Students Come First was Common Core implementation in Idaho. The test scores absolutely affect teachers, and they affect your school's star rating. So, you know, you see how, oh, we go to a 5-star school, or oh, we are going to a 2-star school. Those ratings are based on how the students perform on one test. So, you know, if you've got kids that do really well, test takers, I will tell you, my kids were excellent test takers. They could ace the ISAT, not an issue. But I have other kids that are coming up that I know they won't perform as well. So you're judging a school based on how a certain demographic of students perform on one test. To me, that doesn't seem fair.
No, it does not seem fair. And it doesn't seem fair either that as a parent, I do not have a voice that says, no, I do not want my child to take this test, because it is mandatory that your children take this test. A parent does not get the right to say, no, I'm opting my child out. In fact, the parents may not even ever know when the test is being given. And that's something else that comes along a little along the lines of the data mining as well. So, which I want to talk about as well. This is something that's extremely irritating, and it just drives me nuts, because I don't understand why my income, what my political party has to do with educating my child. All of this information that they're gathering, why do they need it to educate my child?
Well, it's like I said, it's not actually about education. Common Core is not about education. It's about what can be tracked and what can be mined. And it's actually illegal for the United States, the federal government, to have a single database to put all this information in. So what they did is they went to all 50 states, and every single state, whether they signed up for the standards and assessments or not, every single state received money from the stimulus package in the form of what's called the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund. When they accepted those funds, they agreed that they had to build an SLDS, a statewide longitudinal data system. And then later on, they got more grants. Idaho received $9 million in grants, one in about just over $5 million and one in just over $3 million, to build what we call the P20W. And that's preschool, 20 years of schooling, and then on to workforce. So instead of having one large database where the federal government controls, they now have 50 identical ones where the platform is the same, and they can go in and, you know, they can request the data. They have access to it. So, you know, and part of the SBAC, we sort of touched on it, but part of the SBAC is what's called psychometric testing. That doesn't test what you know. It tests your skills and attributes and personality traits and things like that. That goes into, you know, a database that the SBAC has, that the federal government has access to. Data is gold, as we're learning through Facebook and everything.
Yes.
They've gathered all this data. They've gotten it for free. They can sell it. They can give it. They can do whatever they want with it. And it's really interesting. You look at what, you know, you keep hearing Bill Gates, whatever, he doesn't have anything to do with it. You'll hear that from our State Department. Bill Gates has been building a database that will take all this in, and it will tell you that we have too many people in this area. We have too many people in this field. So it makes us, we're cattle, we're livestock, we're a commodity that they will then, you know, shuffle us into the areas where we're needed, rather than letting us, yeah.
And that's true, because data is control. When you have the data on people, you have the control over the people. And it even collects the information about if your child is ADD or ADHD and the type of medications that they take, and if they've ever had any type of psychotic breakdown or meltdown, or if they've had to go to a school psychiatrist, what they have to do with the school psychiatrist. And this is information that follows them all the way into the workplace. That is not okay, because even when I was in school, I made mistakes, and when I was in school, you were able to spank students as well. So, But, you know, if that was to follow me, if my spanking in 3rd grade was to follow me all the way to the workplace, would my employer hold that against me because it shows that maybe I was a little bit rebellious when I was in 3rd grade?
You know, and that's just it. You know, your criminal record, a juvenile criminal record, when you hit 18, they expunge that. It's cleared out. There is no mechanism in this data collecting to clear anything out. And there's no guarantee of who's going to have access to that as your child grows older. You know, we talk about rights and parental rights. As far as I'm concerned, really, this goes beyond that. It goes to what do we as parents have the obligation to protect our children's privacy and our children's data, because they can't do it for themselves. We have no right to give that away because it's something that's going to affect them as an adult later in life. So it's not just even a parental rights, it's an obligation to protect that for our children.
Stephanie, I absolutely love your passion about Common Core, and there's no question about where you stand on this issue. And so for our viewers out there, what can they do to make sure? I know that the Republican Party put out there when they had their meeting up in Moscow that we want to call for immediate, have Governor Otter immediately withdraws from the Common Core standards. To my knowledge, that has not happened yet. What can parents do to let Governor Otter know that, hey, this is not okay. We're not on board with this?
Okay, the first thing to maybe remember, and this is one of the things that is so interesting to me, Common Core crosses all political lines. I will tell you, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals alike hate this. This is big business, big government against the ordinary, you know, person. So talk to your friends and your neighbors. You know, don't care what their political affiliation is. Talk to them. That's where you need to start. Second, we have a petition on our website on idahoansforlocaleducation.com. We have a petition there. Go sign that, please, so that we can give that to our legislators and our governor. And then start writing to the governor. Start emailing him. You know, let him know. And also, we have got you know, AJ Balukov, who's running. Let him know you don't like it. Let the two superintendent candidates, Ybarra and Jones, let them know that we're not backing down. Talk to them. Email them. Ybarra's a little hard to get a hold of, but do your due diligence. Make sure these people know that as Idaho parents, we know what's best for our children, and we know Common Core is not that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm going to have their information. I'm going to put that up on the show here so that they won't have to search for that information, that they can directly contact them, as well as your website, because your website is full of information. Great website to visit if you have questions, anything like that. Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show with me today. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm so glad that there are parents out there that share the same enthusiasm as myself with the Common Core. So thank you so much for being a guest on here today. I could take so much time talking about Common Core and how much we just need to ditch the whole set of standards, but unfortunately, it's a time show. But I do want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be on the show with me today. And again, just as parents, we'll definitely keep getting the word out to other parents and keep letting them know. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Autumn.
You have a great day, and thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time on Chit Chat with Autumn.